Hi everyone, my name is Hadel-Lynn, and today I'm filming here in Bali for my very first time. And I figured for people who are visiting Bali for the first time, some tips and tricks regarding things to know before going to Bali and while in Bali for your first time. If you have any further questions or concerns, make sure to leave a comment below, as well as give this video a like and subscribe. And with that, let's get started. First off, let's start off with what you need to do before you even get to Bali and for once you get to Bali. There are three main components of what you need to do. The first and most important thing is the electronic visa on arrival. You don't have to do it, even though it says in the title, on arrival. I would highly recommend doing it before you arrive, preferably 30 days prior for you to arrive. It's a tourist visa that it can be up to 30 days and then renewed for another 30 days. So 60 days in total. It is 1.5 million rupiah. Highly recommend doing this before you even get to Bali, up to 30 days prior, just because the lines are long, and depending on where you're coming from, immigration can be unforgiving. If you complete the visa before coming, they will email you a QR code. Best to have that printed out as much as possible, but just in case. So once you arrive to Bali, you will be led to basically a kiosk, and it will connect to your passport. So make sure all the information that you fill out on the electronic visa is correct, because if it's not gonna let you through. You literally, all you have to do is you have your passport, you scan it onto a machine. If you have a passport cover, make sure to take it off, because for some reason it doesn't read when you do that. And then it should let you through. If there is a problem with your visa, either an immigration officer will come up to you and see what's going on and tell you to go back in line, or when you are scanning your passport, it will automatically say, hey, you need to go to the immigration line. It can be a stressful experience. Now, the second thing that you need is the tax levy for tourists. This was implemented as of 2024, and it's best to complete this within 72 hours up to your departure. And basically, it's just, as a tourist, you have to pay an additional fee for traveling to Bali. So about 150,000 rupiah, which is $9 US. You just pay it one time and then you're good. Part 3 is the All Indonesia Arrival Card. It's a combination of immigrations, customs, and health declaration. You need to provide your flight information, where you're staying. It says like you need to provide how much money you have, but that wasn't really a thing. And any information on goods that you are bringing in. Do not bring drugs. And this form is completely free. So do not let anyone try and fool you thinking that you gotta pay. You don't. It's completely free, it's pretty quick, and it's not an automatic guarantee of getting accepted the visa, but it is an important component in order to get your visa. So you need to do all three of these things in order to go into Bali. So let's talk about the flights. I'm coming from San Diego. So from San Diego to PS airport, that took a day basically. And for right now, it's October, so it's the off season, it's the start of the wet season, and it was for 3 people, me and my parents, $4,500 round trip for economy tickets, which honestly is really good. Now let's talk about Wi-Fi. For Wi-Fi, this really depends per person. I don't really use it that much while I'm traveling. Mostly I use the hotel Wi-Fi, but if I'm traveling abroad, I have the pocket Wi-Fi here. I got it through Klook. The pocket Wi-Fi for 4 gigabytes for 9 days was about $35 US, and we're only here for 10 days, so honestly, it's fine. However, if you're someone who uses the internet more avidly, you're going to be the person driving yourself around, I would highly recommend getting an eSIM, just because it makes the process easier from when you land to here, but you need an unlocked phone. That's the main thing. So that's why we chose the pocket Wi-Fi, just because we don't really use the internet too much when we're traveling, and also just because our phones are not unlocked yet. Now, in terms of activities in Bali, those prices will vary depending on what you do. It could be $30 US, and I've seen it go all the way up to 100. In terms of budgeting for food, I would say if you're just gonna go around, just normal areas, you can budget less than $50 US per person. Now, obviously, if you're gonna do, a barbecue or something a little bit more elegant, then the price is kind of gonna go up a little bit. But you can definitely, for foods and drinks wise, go off of less than $50 US a day here. Now, let's talk about how insane the exchange rate from US dollars to rupiah is. So $1 US is 16,000 rupiah, and 100,000 rupiah is about $6 US. My family's from the Philippines, so we know that money, especially US dollars, can transfer pretty far especially in Asian countries, but this is a different level. Imagine walking around with thousands, if not millions of rupiah on a daily basis. Like, they even have here $100,000 rupiah bill. I've never walked around with $100,000 bill in my life. I didn't even know those existed. You know what I walk around with on a daily basis? Nothing. I usually have no cash or $1. And so it's good to know that even if you're not from the US, other Western countries as well, the exchange rate can be pretty high. So your money goes pretty far here. Because of the fact that your money goes pretty far here, it can actually be very difficult to kind of keep track of the bills. So make sure when you have to pay for something, make sure that you identify the correct bill, just because it's a lot to work with and sometimes all the zeros can confuse you. Another thing to know about coming to Bali is if you need money, definitely exchange your money over at the airport first, just because that tends to give you the higher rate. But if you do need more money, one thing to know is that for money exchange, the rate changes after 1 p.m. So, if you kind of want to gamble your luck on a daily basis, check to see what the money exchange rate is after 1 p.m. In addition, there are some scams in regarding to money exchange. Sometimes they will say that it can exchange at a higher rate compared to everyone else around, but that may be because they may be stealing money. So to kind of limit the amount of scams that you could be exposed to, look for a place that specifically has the initials PT or CV, because that is the legal standing of being able to do a legitimate money transfer, a money exchange.
Another way to prevent scams is just when they count it in front of you and then you count it.
When they ask to recount it, just be very cautious, because that's kind of when a lot of the scams could happen, because like a few bills could drop or whatever, they could kind of hide it. So when you count it in front of them, so that way you can make sure that everything is legitimate. And just a mental reminder that going to a money exchange, you do need your passport. But if you don't feel comfortable having your passport on you, a lot of places will accept photocopies of your passport as well. Now let's talk about a really fun and sexy topic, Bali Belly. Bali Belly is basically another term for traveler's diarrhea. It's basically when you get exposed to a form of bacteria or virus, just basically a pathogen, either through food or through water that is not, properly prepared, or somehow like feces gets mixed into it. Basically, it's just when you get exposed to things that you put in your mouth that are not clean. And so one way to really prevent that is bottled water. Now, a lot of places in Bali, they use the bottled water when they're cooking, because they're also aware that a lot of travelers, they do not have the stomach to be able to handle a lot of the cuisine and whatnot, and they want to prevent Bali Belly as well. Bali Belly, when it happens, just like any traveler's diarrhea, liquids, electrolytes, if it gets bad enough, then definitely hospitalization. Bali has been pretty good regarding, the water usage, just because a lot of places, they will be upfront and say, hey, we use bottled water, we don't use filtered water, we don't use tap water, just because we understand that it's more of a safety issue. One thing to know about Bali is that Bali is one of the few Asian countries I've ever been to where they actually actively ask if you have any food allergies or food sensitivities. Now, it's a big thing in the US where I'm from, where they always ask that, but I'm surprised here, because usually in Asian countries, you just eat what's in front of you. Like, they don't care if you're allergic to anything. You usually have to tell them up front. But pretty much every place we've been to, they always have asked us, like, do you have any food preferences, food allergies, food sensitivities? And I think it's just because in Bali, there's a lot of tourists that are vegan, vegetarian, stuff like that, and they've been kind of adjusting the cuisine to their palate. So if you have certain dietary considerations, Bali is a good place for that, because they will definitely make sure to take into account of that. But it's just surprising each time, because usually Asian countries, if you're allergic to something, oh well, you just die or you don't eat. That's usually how it is. So it's just a shock here for them to care.
All right, one thing to know about Bali, it's humid as balls. It is so humid. It's October right now, so this rainy season's gonna start soon, but holy crud is it humid just because it's right below the equator. And so just try and get everything done early because it is so humid. I like look how red. I don't know if you can see how red my cheeks are. I currently have the worst heat rash I've ever had in my entire life, where it's spread throughout my entire body. So if you have very sensitive skin like me, highly recommend bringing hydrocortisone, calamine lotion, and stuff like that because you could go to the pharmacy, but pharmacy doesn't always have things that you need.
Okay, so one thing to know about Bali is that it's actually very helpful to have a private driver. I know that there's a lot of motor taxi and bicycles around, but it's humid as hell. So having a private driver really helps because one, driving in Bali, especially if you're coming from a Western country, is nothing like you've ever seen before. Everyone has no rules, but at the same time there's rules. And then it's air conditioned, so you're always nice after running away from the humidity. And then on top of that, a lot of the drivers here are very well connected. They just in case like you want to go to an activity or something, they actually know the ins and outs of it just because they live here, and they may have more connections than you think. We actually have been using a driver here. I can put his contact information below. He's been very helpful for us. We personally requested him for the past few days. His name is Aris, which is a very common name here apparently. It means groom, you said. And he's been incredibly helpful for us, so highly recommend. And I highly recommend having a private driver. Having a private driver here is probably the equivalent of 30 to 45 US dollars on a daily basis, which in the grand scheme of things is pretty cheap for ensuring your safety. So again, highly recommend. And if you're looking for a private driver, I'm putting Aris's contact information below.
All right, another thing to know about Bali is the floating breakfasts. They're very cute on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, but they're just not pragmatic at all. Once you have it in the pool, you're struggling to swim to it if the pool is pretty deep, and also a lot of flies get to it. There's no cover for it on top, so actually what we ended up doing was just taking it out of the pool and just eating it poolside. It's a cute experience for sure, but the practicality of it is just not there.
Now, in terms of my personal critiques, I would give Nusa Dua maybe like a 7 out of 10, just because it doesn't feel very much like Indonesian. It just seems more like, okay, this is like a touch of Balinese here. And then Kuta, I would say I would rank it more like a 6, just because it's so cramped over at Kuta. And when I was surfing, actually, unfortunately, the water was like a little bit dirty and stuff. Like I noticed a little bit of pollution. But I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. And on top of that, it's just so packed and hot.
I almost forgot to talk about Ubud. Ubud is the place that we've been spending the longest amount of time. And I think out of Ubud, Kuta versus Nusa Dua, Ubud is probably my favorite. Maybe not my most favorite on my body, just because I'm having the most heat rashes here. But Ubud it's small, but somehow there's a lot of things to do. Everything, however, is about like an hour away. But Ubud has probably the most things that make Bali within its center. So going to do Kopi Luwak and stuff like that, or going to see a lot of temples. Ubud is probably the most central of how to get to all of those places, and I highly recommend it. It has all the forests and stuff. It's cooler. However, there's no beaches. If you're really into beaches, I would highly recommend maybe Nusa Dua or Kuta. If you want just like an intro taste, then Nusa Dua, because that's closest to the airport as well. But yeah, that is my overall impression of Ubud.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope these tips and tricks help you for your first time in Bali, or for when you're planning for your first time in Bali. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment below. And with that, I wish you all a very good day and a very good night.